All right, everybody. Good late afternoon or early evening. We've made it to the end of the work week. We are cruising into the weekend here. And before we open the book up on this upcoming Baltimore Ravens game, before we talk about that game at some length tomorrow morning, I want to take a look at another data set posted by the great Arjun Menon on Twitter. Hopefully, I pronounced that right. But he's quickly becoming one of my favorite followers on Twitter, or X if you prefer. He's got some really interesting charts that he posts pretty frequently. He posts usually more than one a day. So definitely get over there and give him a follow if you like the kind of data that he's posting here. And he posted a couple things earlier today that really caught my attention as kind of almost a counterpoint to the video that I made a couple days ago about the Seahawks maybe wanting to run the ball more. So we've got two different things we're going to take a look at in this video. This first chart, very interesting one. It's pretty obscure data, but I find it to be very interesting that this is the case. This chart right here basically tracks how often a team calls a running play and then has the runner not run into the intended gap. And then it also tracks how successful those teams are when they do that. So I know this is a little bit of an odd chart, but basically left is bad, right is good, and then up is good, down is bad. So rate of not running into the intended gap. That's the really important thing here. How often does the team call a running play and then not have the runner go where it was planned for them to go? Obviously, this is a bad thing. The more this happens, the worse it is. There are very few circumstances where you don't want the running back to go where the play was intended to go. It does happen from time to time. It is a necessity. Every team is going to have it happen a little bit, and sometimes it works out. But you kind of don't like to see this, right? The Seahawks are far and away, not even close, the number one team in terms of their running backs or runners in general, say, not going into the intended gap. They are at about 26%, so more than a quarter of their running plays end up as kind of improvisation, not going to where they were planned to go. The second place team would be the Colts, and they're at like 23%, so it's not particularly close here. And you can see that while some teams are pretty good when they're forced to improvise, like the Houston Texans and the Buffalo Bills, no team is above 50%. There's one team that is at 50% success rate, and one team right below it. Everyone else is way below it. So this is not really a good thing. And you can see that while the Seahawks are not terrible at it compared to the rest of the league, their success rate on plays where the running back runs into the wrong gap is almost 20%. It's like 22%, which is slightly below league average, and that's not good no matter how you slice it, right? You don't want to be successful on 22% of your running plays. So I find this to be pretty interesting, right? Because this could be like a counterpoint to the video I made earlier this week talking about how the Seahawks might need to run the ball more. Maybe it's a little bit harder to run the ball more when your running backs are not sticking to the plan this frequently. And obviously, when we talk about runners on this team, we are mostly talking about Ken Walker. Charbonnet's gotten carries, of course. Gino's gotten a couple carries. DJ's gotten some carries. Eskridge has gotten a carry. There have been some other guys, but it's mostly K9. So when K9 came out, some people compared him to Barry Sanders. And obviously, when you compare a running back to Barry Sanders, that's a pretty positive comparison. That's a comparison you feel pretty dang good about in most ways. But there are some areas where you're like, I kind of wish he wouldn't do that. And maybe this is just one of them. So I'm looking at this, and it kind of makes me think maybe this is the issue. Maybe this is why we don't feel fully comfortable running the ball because K9 improvises a little too much. I think that a lot of people who watch K9, even though they mostly admit that he is a great player and a great running back, one of the better running backs in this league already, they would acknowledge that, yeah, he maybe tries to do a little too much sometimes and does a little bit of dancing. And I wanted to look at this from a slightly different angle, and Mr. Menon on Twitter was able to assist me pretty much immediately with another chart that he posted earlier today. Run blocking. Could it be the offensive line's fault? Is that a possibility? Could it be, oh, the offensive line doesn't block well, so therefore the running back picks a different gap because he can't use the initial gap because they did a bad job blocking it? Doesn't seem like to be the case here. This chart right here, also from Mr. Menon on X, is basically tracking how often each offense perfectly blocks for a running play. And you can see that the Seahawks right here are pretty well above average into that kind of good territory when it comes to perfectly executing a run block. Now, it doesn't tell the whole picture, but it is very likely that this indicates an above average to good run blocking offensive line. So, therefore, I'm inclined to believe that it is not the offensive line that is causing this issue. The offensive line is doing their job opening up the right gaps. It's just the running back needs to take those gaps with a little more reliability and regularity. Now, I want to stress that in no way is the data in this chart completely definitive. This is only for those situations where the run was perfectly blocked. It doesn't account for a situation where a run is imperfectly blocked. Maybe there was one problem with the blocking, but the intended gap was still the right gap to take. So, for instance, the Seahawks perfectly block on running plays about 36% of the time. So there's a lot of stuff that is unaccounted for there. And you can see that even the best run blocking offensive line in this regard through so far in the season, the Vikings, are only at 42%. So there's a lot of nuance here where the run blocking is good but not perfect. Or maybe it's average but still adequate, but it doesn't reach that perfect level. It'd be interesting to see which offensive lines are currently having the most badly run blocked plays. That would be actually an interesting data set to take a look at. But based off the evidence in these two charts, it looks like it's a running back issue. And I don't think that Zach Charbonnet, in the handful of carries that he's gotten so far this season, is doing a lot of dancing and not picking the right hole. Charbonnet is a guy who plants his foot and goes. So if you're looking to try to find why this is happening, why the Seahawks are so far and away the most likely team to go off script on a running play, it's probably a Kenneth Walker thing. So maybe this is the reason why we're not seeing as much running as you would expect from a Pete Carroll coach team. Maybe this is why you're not seeing as much running as you would expect from a team that has Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet, two recent second round picks on their roster. So that's definitely something to chew on here. Maybe I often say on this channel that it's very easy to get upset at coaches when things don't go according to plan and blame things on coaches. And I feel like some people get so into that they forget to put any blame on the players. So people are getting on Waldron a little bit for the stuff that has been happening this year. And I have too, because I do think there have been some issues with the way he's been calling these games. But maybe it wouldn't be the case if Walker was sticking to the plan a little bit better. All right, so let me know what you guys think about all this. Just more data to look at on your Friday evening, early evening, and I don't know. I want to make sure we're completely fair with looking at all this. I don't want to just look at a little bit of data and say this means that. I want to try to take a look at something a little more comprehensive. And when you see data that is this definitive, the Seahawks are this bad at staying on script on running plays, it's worth talking about. All right, I will see you guys later. Go Hawks. Videos coming tomorrow, stream tomorrow. See you guys there. And let's get it.